Thanks again, everyone, for joining today. As we discussed at the beginning, during this demo, I'm going to be covering how to manage all of your assets across all of your various storage pools that you may be working on. That can be on-premise storage, that can be cloud storage, or maybe even a hybrid scenario with both. Cloud is a huge topic in asset management these days, and for good reason. Cloud offers a ton of benefits, including low storage costs, scalability, transcoding, AI in the cloud, and many other features. But there are some use cases and workflows where using the cloud may not fit, and on-premise workflows may make more sense. So having a system that can work with all of your storage pools, whether on-prem or in the cloud, and being able to leverage the advantages of both is really going to provide you the most value for your productions. Media Backbone Navigator X is Sony's media asset management and workflow orchestration solution. If you haven't already been exposed to Navigator X, we have done 2 previous webinars here that you can view on demand, and those cover some general information about the Navigator X feature set. And we also did a workflow specific webinar on use cases and workflows for production. So please go and check those out if you want to learn more about Navigator X. Today, I'm really going to focus on just how to manage all of your assets across all of these many storage pools that you may be working with, and how to do so amongst various workflows. The main workflows I'll be covering are content acquisition, so getting your content and ingesting it into the system, distribution of your content, including getting your content to your NLEs, and archival of your content. As I log in here, the first thing that you're going to see is the Asset Manager screen. The Asset Manager screen is where you can view and browse all of your assets. You can perform searches, you can view and edit metadata, and you can initiate workflows with our content. But even before we start doing all of those things, the first question is, how do we get our content into the system? And this is really the first area where Navigator X streamlines managing your content from your various storage pools. I'm going to jump into the Asset Importer tool here. And the Asset Importer tool is where you can ingest your content. You can create ingest workflows, including tasks like creating thumbnails and proxies, moving and copying your content, automatically initiating distribution or archive workflows, and many other things. You can also create naming rules to automatically pull sidecar metadata files or relate assets together. And obviously, you can also input common metadata while you're ingesting your assets. So again, this is the main area that you're going to use inside of Navigator X to bring in your assets. But what I really want to draw your attention to is the left here. And this is where you can see actually all of your various storage pools. So first I have this online volume area. This is going to include any local storage, any NAS storage volumes. So you can list those locations, you can add and remove those from the settings, and you can browse them for your various assets for bringing them into the system. You also have the ability to create watch folders. And so with these watch folders, you can basically mount different locations, whether it be, again, on local storage, NAS storage, or another storage pool. You can mount those locations as a watch folder and automatically actually initiate these workflows that I'm speaking about. If you have an existing archive volume, so for example, if you have an existing Sony optical disc archive, or maybe you have an LTO library existing today with content on it, you want to be able to get that content into Navigator X so that you can generate proxies that are viewable inside of the system. And that way, all of that content is searchable, it's previewable, and when you need it, Navigator X can pull it back from your archive volume. So if you have an existing archive volume, you can ingest from that archive volume. You can also ingest from the cloud. So whether you're using our own C Media Cloud platform, which I'll get into a little bit later in this webinar, or an Amazon S3 bucket, you can browse and pull content from those locations as well. You can also pull in content from an FTP location. So if I have some sort of an FTP folder that I have maybe external users uploading to, I can ingest from that location. And lastly, you can use our remote browse feature to actually pull in content from your local storage system. So an example would be if you have an SD card mounted to your client system, you can just browse to that SD card, select it, and actually upload it into the system. So again, you've got a ton of different storage volumes that you can ingest content from. And as I said before, this is really the first place in Navigator X where you can not only see all of your different storage pools, but you can bring content in from all of those storage pools. So one thing I want to show you here is when I actually create my ingest workflow, there's a number of options that I have. So obviously I have the ability to create a proxy for playback in the system. I can create a thumbnail of that for the system as well. But this is what I want to show you. You have the ability to actually either copy your content or move your content from one location or from its original location to a location that Navigator X will then manage, or I can actually leave this unchecked. And what that's going to do is that's going to leave that content in its original storage location, and Navigator X will only retrieve that content when you initiate some sort of workflow. So again, even if you have content spread across all your various storage pools, let's say as an example, I have some content on local storage, I have some content on NAS storage, I have some content on an archive library. Navigator X does not need to actually take all of that content and move it somewhere. You have that option if you would like. So if you would like Navigator X to manage your content in a new location, you can use the options here to do so. But if you want that content to stay in its original location, NavX will leave that content there, record its location, and when you do any sort of a workflow, Navigator X will retrieve it from that storage pool and execute that workflow. So again, as I said before, the asset importer tool is really the first place where not only are you seeing all the content across your various storage pools, but Navigator X is actually managing the content in those different locations so that you don't actually have to move that content anywhere. You can leave it in those storage locations. In addition to being able to ingest from all these various storage pools, you can also create distribution workflows. And when I say a distribution workflow, what I'm talking about is taking your content and actually exporting it from the system to another location. So just like with ingest, you have the same options for distribution. I can distribute content to local storage. I can distribute content to NAS storage. I can distribute content to a cloud location such as C Media Cloud or an S3 bucket. I can distribute content to an FTP Dropbox if I want to. So all of those same storage pools are available for distribution. And what you'll see here is when I go to actually create a distribution preset for my workflows, I have a few options here. I can transcode that content. So say I want to create a distribution for social media. I could create a H.264 profile here. And when I actually do run that distribution workflow, I will actually do that transcode and it will send it out to whatever location I specify for social media. I can require a quality check to make sure that my content is correct. And then I can also obviously specify whether I want to, copy that to a location on local storage or NAS storage. I can transfer that to maybe a C Media box or an FTP location, or I can upload it to a C Workspace or another service. So you have the ability to distribute your content to all of these various storage pools. I'm going to jump back to my asset manager. and show you actually where those distribution workflows live. So I can run workflows on a single asset, I can grab multiple assets, I can initiate workflows from an entire bin of content if I wanted to. You'll see here. So if I were to grab these assets and come up to my workflow dialog, my workflow menu here, I can come down to distribution, and you'll see that I have the option to distribute to any of those storage pools that I've created in my settings. So again, not only can I ingest from all these various storage pools, but I can also distribute content out to all of these various storage pools. So once you have your content registered into the system, and it's searchable, you're organizing your content, you're adding metadata to it, you're exporting it, doing distributions with your content, getting it out to your NLEs, where you're then using it to create your finished pieces. The next thing you're going to be thinking about is obviously redundancy and archive for safekeeping of your content. Navigator X has the ability to archive to a few different types of archive storages. Navigator X supports archiving to a NAS storage volume. You can archive to our own Sony optical disc archive. You can archive to LTO tape via several HSMs that we integrate with, and you can even archive into the cloud. And so one thing you'll notice on all of the assets is you have a status metadata field. You also have an archived metadata field. And these two are used to let you know when assets are archived and when they're online. You'll also, with any archived assets, you'll actually get a yellow underline here of the asset thumbnail to give you a visual indicator that that asset has been archived. But the status here pertains to your master essence. So when you archive your assets, you have the ability to specify whether you want to actually keep or remove your master essence. So if you have a lot of assets and maybe you want to free up some space on your online storage, as a part of your archive profile or your archive workflow, you can specify that you want the master essence to actually be removed. In that case, the status would change to offline and archived would change to yes. Now, the great thing about Navigator X is that even if you've archived your content, your master essence, your proxies are always going to remain online. And what that means is that even though the master essence has been put into that archive volume, you can still search for that content. You can still add metadata to that content. I can preview the proxy still here. I can even export that proxy for my NLE. So say I have these assets here and I've already archived these and I've removed the master essence from my online volume. Well, I can still work with the proxies for my edit. So I've selected these 5 assets here. I'm going to come up to export for NLE. And what you'll see here is in my essence type, instead of doing master, I can actually do proxy. And in this case, I can export those proxies immediately and start editing with those. Now, even if these were archived, I can still export my master. And in that case, Navigator X is going to initiate a workflow that will automatically retrieve those from your archive volume and export those to the destination that you specified. So again, Navigator X will completely automate the ability to archive to any of those volumes and retrieve your content from those volumes. And again, if you have offlined your masters so that they're no longer on your online storage, you can export your proxies and work with your proxies. Additionally, you have the ability to not only archive full content or retrieve full content, but you can do partial archives and retrievals. And so this is great for if you have a long piece where, for example, here I've got multiple clips inside of this piece. Maybe you have a 30-minute piece. Maybe you just want to retrieve a minute of it or 5 minutes of it. What you can do inside of Navigator X is right here on my timeline, I can go ahead and set an in and out point and do a partial retrieval of that content. And in that case, instead of pulling back that entire asset from my archive volume, I can just pull back just the piece of it that I want to pull back. So now that you've seen how NavigatorX can register content, manage content, and archive assets from all of these various on-premise and even some cloud-based storage volumes, I want to cover some more options for using the cloud. And what I'm going to cover is a bit of a hybrid scenario. When I say a hybrid scenario, what I'm talking about is using on-premise infrastructure and the cloud together. So in this case, if you have, for example, a NAS storage volume, and you also have maybe some assets stored in the cloud, and I'll show you reasons why you may want to do that. This is a scenario where you can actually do both at the same time in NavigatorX. You don't have to get a complete separate system to manage all of your assets. You can use NavigatorX to manage all of your assets, again, across those on-premise storage volumes, but also the cloud. And so what I'm going to get into now are how you can actually use our Sony C Media Cloud platform and NavigatorX for some more advanced workflows in the cloud. C Media Cloud is Sony's cloud-based tool for collaboration in the cloud. So if you haven't seen it, you can go to cmediacloud.com. You can actually register for a free account and start using C immediately. But C has some great features for storing content. They're able to do scalable transcoding in the cloud. You have features for review and approval, and even collaboration in the cloud. Using NavigatorX and C, you can now bridge the gap between your on-premise infrastructure and the cloud for some super efficient ingest, distribution, and archive workflows. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is content acquisition. So the cloud can be a great way to get content back to your facility, and you're probably already doing something similar using tools like Dropbox or maybe Box.com to send and receive files. So with C, we can really streamline that process. So the first thing I'm going to do is, you see that I'm already logged into C, and what you're actually viewing is a C workspace. And so this is basically a cloud-based repository where I can store content, I can create folders as you've seen here, and I can store content within those folders. Now, if I go back to NavigatorX, what you'll actually see is that same workspace that you just saw. So this workspace here with these folders that I'm showing you now inside of C, you can also see those inside of NavX. And if I jump into the settings, the account settings inside of NavX here, what you're going to see is that I've actually added my C Media Cloud credentials to NavigatorX, and this lets me sync assets from a C workspace down into NavigatorX. So I've got a few options here. I can do selective sync. This will basically allow me to choose the workspaces that I want to sync. And then I can select what elements I want to sync. So if I'm comfortable pulling the masters down from C, I can pull down the masters. I can pull down the proxy that was generated in the cloud by C, and I can pull down that thumbnail. Or maybe I want to be a little bit faster about getting content from C into NavX, and maybe I'm a little bit concerned about bandwidth usage and ingress egress charges. So I'm going to take off master, and I'm only going to sync my proxies and my thumbnails. What I've done though now is I've created a secure and automated way to use the cloud as an ingest endpoint. And so I'm going to show you an example of that. I'm going to come back into the C workspace, and you could potentially have a remote producer or maybe a contractor out in the field with a laptop exactly like I'm doing here right now, and uploading directly to the C workspace. So maybe I'm a contractor and I've just finished the shoot for you. I have logged into C. I've gone into the folder where I'm going to send that content to. I'm going to come here to upload, and I'm going to go to my a folder that I have with my content, or maybe the SD card that's mounted directly in my computer, and I'm going to grab that piece of content and upload it. So that's going to start uploading, and once it's finished uploading, it will start processing. And when I say processing, C is actually going to generate a proxy in the cloud. And the great thing about using the cloud for generating proxies is that you can leverage some of the cloud properties, like scaling, auto scaling. So if you're doing a lot of transcoding, you don't have to worry about the system slowing down or anything. It's going to just automatically scale in the cloud. So this is going to process, and what you'll see is I've uploaded this asset, it's processing. If I go back into Navigator X and refresh, that asset has already been synced down into my on-premise MAM. So think about that for a second. I've created, again, an automated way to get content in from external users into my on-premise system. So even without having to get a hard drive sent to my facility, or maybe dropped off to my facility, or having to have that producer, upload to Dropbox and then have me download it from Dropbox, ingest it into my MAM. You created an automated way to get content in from the cloud directly to Navigator X. So really powerful stuff there. And so you can do that. Obviously, like I said, you could have somebody just logged into a C workspace and uploading using a laptop. But there's a couple of other ways you can do that. One is if you're using our own Sony cameras. Many of our cameras have the ability to create proxies on the fly, and those cameras can actually upload those proxies directly to C using a Wi-Fi or an LTE dongle. So you'll see these are some test clips I shot with one of our 200 cameras, and those proxies actually get uploaded directly to C, and using the syncing, I can have those proxies automatically sync down into my system, as you're seeing here. So if you think about that, you could actually be shooting with a camera in the field, and using either a Wi-Fi or an LTE dongle, you can actually have those proxies being sent back to your on-premise MAM, where then I can go and I can grab that, my editors can grab that, and take those proxies directly into an edit session before the camera even makes it back to my facility. So again, a really great workflow for remote productions. And lastly, C has a very cool option or feature called file requests. And file requests allow you to send a branded email to an external user and basically request that they upload content to this branded page. So you can specify what you're looking for in the request. You can add a note, add an expiration date, and when they click on that link in their email, it's going to take them to a branded page where they can upload that content directly through their browser. And again, once they've uploaded that content, it's going to pull it into your C workspace, and you can have that automatically sync down into your MAM. So again, another scenario where you could potentially have a contractor or maybe an outside agency that you work with that you want to get content from. They can upload directly to that file request. And instead of having to go to another service like Dropbox or Box.com, download that content, ingest it into your MAM, you can automate that entire process here. Going the other way, we can also use the cloud as a distribution endpoint. And so in this case, we can use the cloud as a way to extend our MAM outside of our normal network. So many times your on-premise MAM is restricted by your IT policies and the firewalls that they put in place. And for good reason, you don't want outsiders to be able to access your sensitive content. But with the integration between Navigator X and C, Now you have a secure way to share your on-premise content with external stakeholders. So I'll show you a couple of ways we can do that. One is we can create a distribution workflow to actually distribute to a C workspace. So you'll see if I come here to my settings and I go down to my distribution workflows, just like any other distribution, I can do a transcode. So maybe I want to transcode to H.264 or maybe ProRes or something else. I can select that transcode. I can transcode that file, and then I can actually transfer that to my C. I can upload it to my C workspace. So if I come back to the asset manager and I go to select my assets, I can take these assets. So these are my on-premise assets here. I can take these assets, I can go to my workflows and initiate a distribution workflow to a C workspace. And that's actually going to take my on-premise content, even if it's sitting somewhere in archive. So even if it's sitting on our Sony optical disc archive, or maybe it's sitting on LTO tape, NavigatorX will automatically retrieve that content from that archive volume and push it up to that C workspace. And now any users that have access to the C workspace are going to get an email notification to let them know that there's new content. And without having to log into your MAM system through like a VPN or some other secure way, they can log directly into C. And since C is completely cloud-based, it's on HTTPS, you don't have to worry about the security of your assets or opening up your network to outside users. They can just log directly into C. They can view that content. They can download that content. Again, C has some great features for review and approval and collaboration in the cloud. So that's one way you can distribute it to a C workspace. But say you have a scenario where you want to send content to somebody, maybe it's a one-off job, or maybe you don't want to give them access to C or to NavigatorX. Well, there's another way you can do that. C has a great feature called MediaBox. And I'm going to show you the options here for a MediaBox. So a MediaBox will allow you to send content via a branded email. And once that branded email is received by that external stakeholder, they'll get a link. And when they click on that link, it's going to take them to a branded page where they can then view that content. If you've given them permission to, they can download that content. And so that allows you to distribute that content externally. You can do a secure media box, which would require them to actually log into C. You can do a protected media box, and you can actually define a password, or you can just do a public one, and anybody with the link will have access to it. So with this media box feature and the integration with C and NavigatorX, now I can take my on-premise assets and share those externally. So again, the great thing there is I can take these assets that are sitting maybe on a NAS storage location, maybe they're sitting on LTO tape, and I can take those assets, I can do a distribution workflow and automatically create that media box directly from within NavigatorX. So you don't have to jump back and forth between the NavigatorX and the C interface. You can do it directly from within NavigatorX. And now you're going to be able to take your on-premise assets and share those externally. And so you have a secure way now to either push those assets to a C workspace or push those assets to a media box. And now you can share your content with external stakeholders, and you don't have to give them access to your MAM. And if you don't want to, you don't even have to give them access into C using the media box workflow. So some great ways to use the cloud as a way to extend your MAM outside of your normal network. And the last thing I want to show you with the integration here between NavigatorX and C is how you can use the integration to archive in the cloud. So again, giving you another storage volume that you can manage and push your content to. We see a lot of folks that are investigating archiving in the cloud, or maybe they're doing it already. Archiving in the cloud is becoming a great solution because it's Obviously very cost effective. You don't have to worry about on-premise infrastructure. It's a great option if you don't already have an existing LTO library or an ODA library, or maybe you're looking to transition and reduce your on-premise footprint. Now you have the ability to archive into the cloud using this integration between NavigatorX and C. So again, I can take my on-premise assets and I can initiate an archive workflow to C. And what this is going to do is this is going to take my on-premise assets, push them up to C, and initiate an archive into Amazon Glacier. And if you're not familiar, Amazon Glacier is basically Amazon's dormant storage, and it's a much cheaper rate than normal online S3 storage. So again, with the integration now, not only do you have the option to archive to a NAS storage volume, to Sony Optical Disc Archive, or to an LTO library, but you can actually archive now into the cloud. And just like archiving into any of those other storage volumes, even if you offline your master essences, your proxies are always going to remain online. So you can search for your content, you can edit its metadata, you can play back the proxy file, you can even export that proxy if you want to work with it in your NLE. So again, even if you have it archived in the cloud, you don't have to worry about pulling it back just to edit with. You can edit with that proxy. And when you are ready to go out and export your master, that's when you can pull it back from any of your archive volumes. So as I wrap up here, I just want to reiterate that having a system where you can manage your content and your workflows across all of your various storage pools, whether on-premise or in the cloud, you heard me mention local storage, NAS storage, cloud-based storage, whether it be C Media Cloud or Amazon S3, FTP locations, archive volumes, whether it be our own Sony Optical Disc Archive, or maybe an existing LTO library. Being able to leverage all of those assets that you have living in all of those storage pools, and being able to leverage the benefits of each of those types of storage pools. So, you know, leveraging the benefits of cloud storage and how cheap it is, but leveraging the speed of maybe your online nearline storage. Being able to manage your assets across all of those various storage pools is really going to provide you the most value and efficiency in your productions. So with that, I'd like to thank you all for joining me today, and I hope you've seen some easy and great ways that you can use NavigatorX and C to manage all of your content anywhere. Thank you.